Hello, everybody. Good afternoon and good evening. My name is Ozzy. I am the head organizer for the California Fire Relief Marathon, a charity marathon for speedrunning charity marathon that I originally created in order to support relief efforts in California and surrounding regions. Uh, it's been a rough several years for friends, family of mine who have gone through many unfortunate happenstances because of just wildfires. It's a pretty tough situation when you don't know what's going to happen every wildfire season. So this marathon is dedicated to those that have suffered under these conditions. And we're all going to put on a excellent show for you guys. We're going to have good old Jason here play some Cuphead for you guys. Please enjoy. That's it for me. Take it away, guys.
All right. Well, thank you, Ozzy. I'm Mark Kellen. All right. Well, thanks for the handover, Ozzy. I'm Wim Kellen, and I will be the first host here for California Fire Relief Marathon. And our first game is Cuphead by Jason2890.
Yep, that's me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you great.
All right, perfect. You want me to give a countdown before we start this?
Yes, please, whenever you're ready.
All right, we're going to start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All right, so I'm being joined right now by SBD Wolf. Wolf,
hey guys.
Hey.
Yes. So I'll be co-commentating with Jason during this run, since we both play this category at a pretty high level, and we both know how to use this charm that we're going to be using later on, which is called Whetstone, and pretty much breaks a lot of bosses in a very similar way to Legacy.
Yeah, so for those of you that are familiar with Cuphead, this is the all flags category, which basically what that means we're going to be fighting all the bosses and doing all the runs. And this is currently this is being played on the current patch of the game. So for those of you that may have watched the Cuphead run at GDQ, that was actually played in the Legacy version that used the weapon swap glitch. So this is going to look very different than that run, just because a lot of different tech is used when you don't have access to the weapon swap glitch. Interesting combinations of weapons and charms to do maximum damage for what they've patched out of the game. So the very first level we're doing right here is a run and gun. This is called Forest Follies. Right there, I just did a trick to get under that acorn machine, which saves a few seconds, and that way we don't have to end up fighting that guy.
Yeah, that clip is pretty notorious within our community because it's one clip that top runners keep resetting on, and it's not. It doesn't feel like a frame perfect clip. We don't know exactly what the frame window for that is, but it's definitely very precise, and people just keep resetting for that clip until they get it.
Yeah, a lot of Cuphead speedruns are just repeats of that level over and over again until they finally get a run that gets past it on decent pace. But up next, we're going to do the second run and gun on aisle 1, Treetop Trouble. This is a pretty fun one.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of the most unique running guns in the game because I don't think there's many other stages that have this vertical climbing section that we'll see later on. In the first section, all he's gonna try and do is to try and take that coin that is gonna need later on. Other than that, it can still meet the same cycle of platforms, even by taking that coin.
Yeah, what we're doing right now, the first 4 run guns we're going to play, we're going to pick up all 5 coins. There's 5 coins in each run gun, and we're going to use those to buy items from the shop. We're going to take 2 trips to the shop throughout the course of the run just to buy weapons to make the run go quicker. And you'll see what we'll buy in just a sec.
Yeah,
there's a little mini boss. You can just jump over him, and that level's done.
Yeah, and the shop trip is the reason why Jason decided to do Street of Trouble before going to the shop, and he took that little detour. Basically, he wants to get coins from another running gun so that he can buy more weapons than he normally would be able to buy.
Yeah, we're going to go to the shop now. We're going to buy 3 weapons. We're going to buy Spread, which is probably the highest DPS weapon in the game, just for a single weapon. We're going to buy Charge, and we're going to buy Lobber. And we're going to do a little trick right here. There we go. Okay. So frame perfect. If you buy and exit the shop at the same time, you could buy items as the shop animation's exiting. So that's what we did right there. Now we're going to go on to the first boss.
Yeah, so he bought Charge, but he's not using it right now. He's just going to keep it later. For the first 3 bosses, using Lobber is actually better than Charge because of a few things that he can do, especially here in the root pack. You can save a lot of time with Lobber compared to Charge. What he's doing right here exactly. He can create a trap for the onion, and all of those Lobber shots he shot earlier are going to hit the onion as soon as it comes on screen. And as you can see, the onion just goes down pretty quickly without much of a fight.
We're also going to be using a trick with the Lobber EX attack that was just discovered fairly recently, within the last couple weeks, that allows you to do double damage with it by shooting it at a boss's feet. And then you hit the boss from the impact of the Lobber and from splash damage, so it ends up doing double the damage it would normally do.
Yeah, and this very trick saves a lot of time in the very next fight, which is Ruby and Croaks. This next fight is a cycle-based fight, so if possible, you want to clear the fight with as few cycles as possible. And thanks to this trick, you can actually cut cycles way more easily than you can do with other weapons.
Yeah, this is probably the first big roadblock in this category, because you want to get what's called the super skip and then 1 cycle to final phase. And this is not very good RNG for it, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's still possible to have an optimal fight with this RNG, but it's much tougher.
I did not get the skip, unfortunately.
Yeah, that had to be very close.
So sometimes if you do enough damage there, you could get the boss animation to kind of glitch out and have the frog roll into the other frog while they're both on the same side, but we had to go sit and watch an extra animation of him rolling across.
Hopefully Jason can make up with a 1 cycle here, which, as long as you have good execution, you can get it with most patterns here. But then again, you need to do everything precisely. And that's the 1 cycle.
So still a pretty quick time because I got a good pattern. At that final phase there with the slot machine, the boss could do 1 of 3 attacks, and the one that it gave me was the longest attack, so it gave me the easiest opportunity to beat the boss without having to wait for a second attack cycle. Up next is Goopy Legrande, or Grand. This boss is fairly simple. This is probably meant to be the first boss you play, but because of routing, we end up doing this boss a little bit later. I guess Root Pack or this boss are meant to be the first. They're both fairly simple.
Yeah, this fight is mostly just about following them around the screen, following Goopy around the screen until he actually dies.
Well, that being the case, can I slip in a couple of donations?
Yeah, go for it.
Alright, we've got $10 from Shawnee7188. Marathon Hype. All the best to all the runners. Donation goes to the runner's choice. And $10 from, I'm going to butcher this, Grimilios. Something along those lines. Excited for the marathon? Good luck to Jason on Cuphead and everyone else this weekend. I hope we blow away that $3,000 goal.
So up next, we're doing the first of many plane bosses. So these are, these bosses are a little bit different than the other ones that we've seen so far. And I don't know, what do you have to say about this fight, Wolf?
Yeah, first of all, what Jason is doing here is a pretty risky strategy. Basically, you can let yourself take damage and then use a Flame Axe just as Hilda's coming back on screen. And that way you can deal pretty much more than double the damage that you will normally do with a Flame Axe. That, of course, requires taking 1 HP of damage. So pretty much Jason is pretty confident with this fight, so he's not going to really take much unintentional damage. So he can do that pretty safely. Also, he's trying to avoid getting to 5 cards. If you get 5 cards in a playing stage, you automatically get access to another super, which is the nuke. But activating that special takes 1 second, so it's slower. He's trying to stay below that count. And the final phase is just about dodging UFOs, and that's it.
There we go. It's a pretty clean fight. Up next, I'm going to be changing my weapons just a little bit for the next boss, Cagney. And I'm going to be using these weapons for a few bosses here. But I'm going to be using Charge now. Charge and Spread. And Charge lets you fire kind of like Mega Man's X-Buster. Like you charge it up and then shoot a more powerful shot. And it gives you a little bit more leeway with where you can travel, since you don't have to constantly aim at the boss.
Yeah, for this boss in specific, Cagney's hitbox is pretty small, so if he wasn't using Charge, he was likely going to miss most shots. So Charge, even though the damage output from Charge shot is a little bit lower, it ends up being better simply because you cannot connect as much with the spread.
Boss also has the best music in the game.
Yeah.
So with that was the last boss on Aisle 1. We're going to move on to Aisle 2 now. And we're going to do 2 more run and guns and get more coins there. We're not going to do them right away, but we're going to be those coins to take another shop trip on Aisle 2 to buy the rest of the items we'll need for the run.
Yeah, Jason is going to do a little bit of a different route than you'd see in normal bosses run. That's purely because you need to do 2 run and gun stages before visiting the shop, so you actually had to change your route a bit to make it work.
Yeah, the weapons that we're buying are going to kind of break the game open in terms of damage potential, so we want to try to get those as soon as possible on this aisle so we can use them on as many bosses as we can. This boss has randomized minions. There's 3 phases of mini bosses, I guess, before you fight the actual boss. And there are 5 different minions that she could send out. And each one has different attack patterns and takes different amounts of time. So this is a very RNG-based fight on how long it could take.
Yeah,
that was
definitely.
not the best pattern of minions right there, but still finished the fight in fairly quick manner.
Yeah. I think the difference in time between the best and worst combination is probably close up to around 6 seconds. Although Charge Shot does make the fight much more consistent than with Flubber.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to talk to this guy right here to grab bombs, which we're going to use on the airplane levels. We're not going to do an airplane level just yet. We're going to do this run and gun first, but those will come in handy in a little bit. This is one of the hardest run and guns, probably one of the hardest levels in this category, totally, because there's just a lot of randomness, especially at the end. You'll see what I mean soon.
Yeah, starting from this beginning blue section, which was actually very kind this time. But if you get bad balloon spawns, then you're gonna have to wait. A little bit of a trick there. He did not just dash through the Tin Man. He shot a charge shot before dashing, and that's why he was able to get past them.
Yeah, this part here, random condiments fly at you from the right side of the screen, and they fly at different intervals, random intervals and random heights. So it's kind of a pain to dodge, but luckily we have enough HP to just get through this part. And next is going to be the last plane boss that we're going to play normally, I guess you could say, because after this, the next plane boss, we're going to have Whetstone, which is going to significantly change how we play these fights.
Yeah, that is for sure. Technically, you can decide to skip Wally for now and come back to him later after you get Whetstone, which does make the fight faster, but not enough to really make it worth it.
Yeah, it's very, very high risk for very low reward.
You can use a nuke right there to just kind of stay inside the circle of eggs, so that way you can feed it a little bit extra damage than normal, getting the iframes. Arthur NG, I don't think a lot of people know that Wally's body is invincible while he's doing the heart, and you have to actually go up and hit the heart. But other than that, that's a pretty straightforward final phase.
We also did something a little bit interesting there as well. You may have noticed I paused right before the final phase appeared, and that's because of another trick that was discovered probably just a few months ago, not too long ago. But if you pause and unpause the game right there, it makes the final phase spawn in faster. Normally there's like maybe 2 seconds before the final phase spawns up on the bottom, but for some reason that triggers the final phase to spawn immediately. So you save a little bit of time by pausing and unpausing there. And there is one more battle later, the very final fight, where there's another pause trick that was just discovered a few days ago. So we'll be doing that later.
Yeah, stay tuned for that. That is a very interesting post buffer that we're going to see later on. But about this fight, it did switch to charged lobber. He took up the spread. And as you can see, this fight is quite a mess to do the spread with the clouds moving and all. It's very hard to stay up in Grimm's hitbox. And while it's possible to get really good times with spread, using charged lobber is much more consistent. And this is what I think is the most notorious phase for Grimm, with all the fireballs, which can be a bit of a problem. But with the way Jason is jumping above them, it shouldn't be too much of an issue.
There we go. Took some intentional damage there at the end because I knew the boss was very low on HP and I didn't want to risk turning around to miss out on some shots. The next level is going to be the last run and gun where we're aiming to get all the coins. After that, we're going to try to avoid coins because getting coins makes the result screen take slightly longer. This is probably, in my opinion, the most fun run and gun. There's 2 wall clip tricks in this level that I'll try to pull off if I don't get hit unintentionally. You want to explain how that trick works, Wolf?
Oh, yeah, man, it's a little bit
intentional damage there.
Oh, so that means he cannot do another wall kit on another door at the end.
Ooh.
Oh.
Untimely death right there.
Yeah, so maybe we'll get to see another clip at the end. So basically, there's an invisible platform there at the door. So what he's doing is he's taking iframes either off of the cars, as he just did, or from the door. and then he reverses gravity, lands on that platform, and then jumps and dashes right through the door.
Yeah, we're going to do something very similar at the end of this level. Luckily, if you fall into the ceiling pit whenever gravity is reversed, it puts you at the exact height to clip through the wall right here. So that's what we just did right there. And we did take a death, unfortunately, but that was a fairly small time loss there in the scheme of things. It was about 20 seconds because it was toward the beginning of a very short level. So it's not too bad. And now we're going to take a second and last shop trip here to buy the rest of the items we need.
Yeah, I believe this is the end of the first half of the run. After the shop, very interesting things are going to happen. And it's all thanks to this charm, Whetstone.
Yep, I just equipped Whetstone here, and this basically turns Cuphead's parry into an axe attack that you can damage enemies with. So to maximize damage, we are going to be playing as close to the bosses as possible from here on to the rest of the run. Just to maximize how many times we hit him.
Yeah, Whetstone pretty much requires you to play very up close.
I might opt for a safer strat for the rest of this boss since I already took 2 damage in the first phase. Normally you want to take 1 damage intentionally there just to maximize how many hits, but when you're on 1 HP, kind of have to switch it up a little bit.
Yeah, normally this puppet can go down pretty quickly if you're able to deal enough damage. Unfortunately, due to taking damage earlier, Jason had to play a little bit safer than usual. So he was not able to deal as much damage as usual. Still a very quick fight, though.
Yeah, compared to times that you get without Whetstone, that saved maybe 5 seconds or so. And up next is probably another major trick. Probably one of the... I guess there's 3 major tricks if you count Ruby and Croaks. But this is a boss that can be very broken. There's a trick here where if you do enough damage to push the boss to its 3rd phase while it's still in its 1st phase, it ends up just glitching out the rest of the fight and giving a bunch of explosions and stuff flying everywhere. You'll see if I can hopefully do it. It's very hard to do on current patch just because of the damage output not being as much as you can do on Legacy. And I got it. Okay. So there's these explosions at the top of the screen right now, and that indicates that you got the glitch. So now the boss is going to be stuck in this phase for the rest of the fight.
Yeah, which is very important because you end up saving a lot of time in phase transitions. Going through this phase is not easy by having to dodge all of those dog balloons. Especially since you're usually at 1 or at most 2 HP by this point.
Yeah, comparing that to a normal fight, usually that fight takes over a minute, probably around like 105, ideally. So we're able to save close to 20 seconds just from getting that glitch off there. And that's it for Aisle 2. Moving on to Aisle 3.
Yeah, looking into the next boss, we're gonna try and look for some specific patterns. Ideally, you want to get the middle pattern, where if you deal enough damage, you can actually one-cycle the entire fight. But that's very unlikely to happen. especially in a marathon. But if you don't get that middle pattern, then what Jason is probably going to try and do is look at the attack from the side pattern, because her attacks are on a cycle, so they go from spheres to triangles to middle. So if you get one of the attacks, they're going to go in a sequence like this. So Jason is definitely going to hold back a bit now to try and get triangles.
No, I'm not trying to get triangles.
Oh.
I'm trying to do final phase right here. If you do enough damage, you could one cycle this before she turns to the plane. I did not there, but it should still be a fairly quick final phase here.
Yeah, it's just a matter of a couple of charge shots.
There we go. Okay. Normally, if she drops to the side and uses the triangles attack first, I try to hold back damage a little bit so I can kill her whenever she does the next attack, which would be in the middle. But for there, I just try to go all out whenever she uses the pink sphere attack and try to kill her before she turns to the plane. Unfortunately, it didn't work out there, but it's still a fairly quick fight.
Yeah, I'm playing risky on this fight. It's very dangerous, simply because of the randomness of platforms. You don't really have a very specific strategy to follow every time.
Coming up on this run and gun, this is definitely one of the harder run and guns in casual play, and still probably pretty difficult for this also. We're going to use Whetstone to jump over these stone lines so we don't have to kill them, because they take a little bit of time to kill.
Yeah, this is also the longest running gun in the category, which has 2 auto-scrollers. Well, kinda. We're gonna see later.
Yeah, this is an auto-scroller where we can't move past the right side of the screen because we're going down right now to the next part of the level. So we'll just kill time here.
It's technically possible to get past this running gun, this auto-scroller, by doing a ledge clip right at the start, but it's not really useful for RTA runs.
Yeah.
Well, I heard auto-scroller.
Speedrunner's best friend.
Yeah, well, we've got a $20 donation from Kant. No comment left, but thank you. And I would like to say that our first donation incentive is coming up right after this run. All costumes mode for Superman Shattered Dimensions. We still need a bit towards that. And I believe that the speed gaming community can make it happen.
Yeah, so this section it was supposed to be an auto-scroller, but you can just get past it. The game is not stopping you in any way. But unfortunately, doing that makes the camera a little weird, and the flames are in a random pattern every time. So you have no idea on the position of these flames.
Yeah,
so
the platforms themselves are in a set position, so by memorizing where the platforms are, you can figure out where to jump, but unfortunately those flames are kind of RNG there, and I got hit by one of them. For anyone familiar with this fight on Legacy, there's a quick kill you can do, which kills the boss in like less than 15 seconds. But they patched that out of the game, so we're going to go do this fight the normal way, I suppose. Although, we're not really going to do it the normal way, since we're going to be using Whetstone. Okay. I'm going to try to use a nuke right here to maximize my damage by using invincibility frames. And then we're going to try to stay as close to Dr. Call's robot, or Dr. Call as we can.
Yeah, that was really good nuke usage.
Oops. There we go.
And that's the fight.
In casual playthrough, that fight can give people nightmares. Especially that final phase, which seems to last forever. But luckily, you make pretty quick work of it with Whetstone.
Next up, normally in all bosses run, you go to Sally, stage play. But thanks to doing Rocket Rage, we opened up a path that was directed to Vernon Vermon, and it turns out that following this path is faster than doing the all bosses route. So speaking of Werner, doing this fight with Whetstone is extremely difficult, just because of the way Bernard goes back and forth, and all the projectiles that he's sending out. And one of the primary reasons why Jason is using Charge is because it synergizes really well with Whetstone. If you were using another weapon like Spread or Lobber, you wouldn't be able to hit as many bullets. Like with the very low weapon cooldown that you usually have, using Whetstone and then backing off will use a lot of damage. But thanks to Charge, you can hold on to that damage and release it once you have the boss under your aim. And the final phase is pretty quick.
Next boss is going to be Captain Brinybeard. He's usually regarded as one of the easier bosses in the game, but for a speedrunner, he's kind of a nightmare because his attacks are heavily RNG based, and depending on what attacks he uses, it could delay how soon you can get to the final phase. So we'll see how kind he is to me today.
Yeah, and also switching to Lobber as a secondary weapon, not really because of the first phase, but for the final one, which we'll see later. But doing the fight this way pretty much revolves around using Charge as much as possible and using Lobber for the access, which deals more damage than the Charge.
He's giving me 2 long attack patterns, and he's going to see what he gives me for the third attack.
Yeah,
the quickest you can get him to his final phase is 3 attacks, and there we go. We got him to the final phase in 3 attacks, luckily.
Yeah, that's the 3 cycle. And this is the main reason why Jason switched to Lobber, is because of this final phase. If you were to use Charge access, then you wouldn't be able to hit the boat, which is very important in order to one-cycle this boat. If you spend too much time killing it, then it's going to close its mouth and try to fire a razor, which loses time.
Yep. And the next level is the final run gun, and also the hardest one. It's going to hopefully... there's a trick in here that's very difficult. This is where Wolf and I have had many runs die. You could explain what we're going to do here, Wolf.
Yeah, so if you notice, Jason equipped the heart, which is really important to do a trick at the end, which is called Octopus Skip. So basically, there's an auto-scroller at the end. And I mean, we don't like auto-scrollers. And you can skip that auto-scroller, which saves like 15 seconds. But it requires not taking damage at all during the stage, as well as having 1 additional HP and just hoping that the shrimps that we're going to encounter later on are not going to hit you during this. Otherwise, it's going to make it really difficult to make the skip happen. And if you get hit later into the skip, then it's just a death.
Yep.
So hopefully
we'll
we're going to see it happen. Looking good so far.
And we got it. Nice.
Nice.
It's a very, very difficult trick. There's not a lot of room for error, and if you're just unlucky and those shrimp hit you when you're in the air, they knock you back a little bit, and that doesn't give you enough time to get to the end before you die.
Yeah, those shrimps killing your momentum is just the worst. The first try octopus skip is not something that you see very often.
Yeah, there's a backup strat that only loses maybe 12 seconds, but it's not ideal to have to do that. But if you end up taking damage earlier, oops, speaking of early damage, but if you end up taking damage earlier, you could use that backup strat and make the octopus go a little bit faster in the auto scroll section than it normally does.
Yeah, had to dodge those ghosts there because if you were to take damage that early, then you have to sit through also this attack, and you will have to dodge this attack instead. You will not have enough HP to tank the fish as well. So it's just better to dodge the ghost at the start and tank or through the next one if needed.
Unfortunately, this is a pretty bad fight so far in terms of RNG, because her first attack could be either summoning a minion, shooting ghosts, or going down for a fish attack. And if she starts with the ghost, you can't get her into the second phase as quickly. So unfortunately, we had to play back a little bit to avoid taking too much damage.
Yeah, talking about a 10 seconds difference between best and worst RNG. Getting at 49 here, the best time you can get is 37 so far. Which the in-game time is a little bit deceiving. Every time you use Whetstone, you get a little bit of stream lag, which pauses the in-game timer for a bit. So even if you get a 37 seconds fight, going by real time, it's not actually 37 seconds. It's a bit longer. But it definitely saves time over doing the fight without Whetstone, despite all the stream lag. Also, Jason did not switch back to spread. Because if you keep Lubber for this fight, you can do the Lubber glitch again, which is we saw a lot of the start. And turns out during the fight with the Lubber glitch, it's actually better than using spread. Doing some pretty nice dodge.
Thanks.
Skipping the...
That ended up being a pretty good fight. The first phase is a little bit sketchy on that, but I ended up playing pretty well for the final phases of the fight. Next, we're going to menu one more time to equip spread, and we're going to be using that for the rest of the run. We have the last boss of Aisle 3 coming up, and then we have the final 2 bosses after that. So we're coming up on the end of the run already.
Yeah, and this is the last equip.
We're going to play this fight pretty aggressively.
Yeah, that was a pretty good first phase. Coming up with this skeleton, usually you want to get a 2 cycle in a boss's run. Since you're using charge, this is not that big of a deal. You can usually get a 2 cycle really easily. Coming up is the twin phase, which there are some cool strategies you can do with Whetstone. Yeah, pretty much switching targets just before killing a twin, so that you can kill both of them on the same side. And then the engine, which you can get a 1 cycle pretty easily with charge.
It was a pretty clean fight for the most part. Yeah. It was a very fast time. All right, so the next boss is very unique. We're going to be facing King Dice. And the layout of that boss is kind of like a mini game. You have to roll a die, and depending on what you land on, there are 9 different mini bosses that you can fight. You have to fight at least 3 of them in order to get to the end of the board to fight King Dice himself. So ideally, we are going to try to fight boss 2, 4, and 8 because they're the bosses that have the least amount of HP in each group of 3. And hopefully, if we get good RNG, it'll be hearts above some of those. Yeah, we have a heart above boss 8. So once we get to boss 8, we'll actually get 1 additional HP, which will come in handy for damage boosting at the end.
Yeah, and doing the King Dice mini bosses with Whetstone makes them much more, makes them go down much more quickly than you see in a normal boss run without charge.
Yeah, that boss right there, the stack of poker chips, he's only vulnerable in the head, and we just I did my best there to just shoot my charge shots at his head and time my Whetstone hits, so we maximize damage there.
Yeah, this next mini boss.
Yeah, you go ahead, Wolf.
This is one of, I think, the most interesting mini bosses to see being done with Whetstone, simply because of all the nice movements you're doing with both trying to avoid his attacks and the floor. Other than that, it's also a fight that goes down pretty quickly. And then we're going to try to land on number 8, which is by far the fastest mini boss in the next set of them. Usually, if you've seen a legacy run, people usually do number 9, which is the monkey. There is a glitch in the 1.0 version where you can simply skip the entire fight by clipping the monkey out of bounds. But that has been patched, and the fight is actually really long on current patch.
Yeah, it's by far the longest mini boss fight if you do it normally.
While the 8 ball is by far the fastest mini boss in the entire board.
Ooh, I took damage that I didn't mean to, so I'll have to parry cards at the King Dice part of the fight here. If you have at least 3 HP on current patch, it's pretty easy to just tank the damage from the cards and beat King Dice without getting any parries, which makes the result screen slightly faster, but because I took damage there, I'm just going to play the fight how you'd normally be expected to play it, where you parry the pink cards. There we go. And coming up, we have the final boss, which is going to feature that one trick I mentioned earlier where you pause. Normally, whenever the boss goes from first to second phase, you drop down a hole, you'll see here soon. And then there's a little animation where Cuphead is looking at the devil. But if you pause and unpause and then shoot an EX, we discovered that you can actually negate that animation, so you could actually move whenever you're not supposed to be able to, and then just deal damage there. It's called the Geo Buffer.
Yeah, very recently found, and it's probably changed the way this level has been played. Some risky strategies to try and get a 1 cycle here in phase 1. Which unfortunately Jason did not get, but it was really close for sure. Right, and there's the boss buffer, which allows you to move earlier than intended.
No, that flaming chip.
Oh, that's really unfortunate. Pretty much right at the end.
Yep. That was the final phase right there.
And this the most unfortunate attack. It's not that big of a deal with charge, but the spider attack pretty much doesn't leave that much time to damage the devil. His hitbox is off screen most of the time. So the best you can do is really just charge your charge shot and release it once the spider goes down.
And coming up, the timer for the game starts or stops whenever we see knockout on the devil. Should have mentioned that before, but I died anyway, so it didn't matter. Got here with much more health now. Should be easy, and that's time. So that's Cuphead. That's the all flags category.
Very nice.
Yeah, slightly above 40 minutes with load times, so that is a really good time.
Yeah, loadless time was 37 minutes and 40 seconds, which, perspective, the world record is 36 minutes and 9 seconds. So that last death, unfortunately, cost nearly a minute, but it was still a very, very solid run. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and hope you guys enjoy the rest of the marathon as well.
And thank you for running our opener.